Wow, those little creepers are cute, but they are unstable. Hey everybody, welcome to the Jayda and Stitches show. We have had several requests to do more Minecraft projects, and we love Minecraft here, so we thought we would give you a double dose of the creeper today. So today I'm going to show you how to make this double strand ear warmer headband, and as an added bonus, it's going to be offered as a free pattern on our website over at www.jaydaandstitches.com, so you can pop over there and grab the free pattern and you can follow along with me as we make this. And if ear warmers are not something that the members of your family either can wear, or maybe you're thinking you need something a bit warmer, then you can also check out our hat pattern. And both this hat pattern and this double strand ear warmer headband pattern are completely size customizable. So both patterns work on measurements only, not stitch count. So you can make this hairband with me today, or you can make the hat with me the other day. Is that like kind of being in two dimensions at once? Maybe it is, I'm not sure. Either way, make them both using this double strand technique that I'm going to show you today, and you can use the same face, so the same sort of patch face that I'm going to show you how to make today, and you can put it either on your headband or on your hat. So let's talk about double strand before we get into the tutorial. You do not necessarily need 2 balls of yarn. If you happen to have them lying around, great. But you want to have 2 strands running. It doesn't always have to be from buying 2 balls of yarn. So you need roughly 50 grams per ball in order to make this ear warmer headband. If you're making the hat, you're going to need about 100 grams per ball. And if you've got one big ball, so like you've got 150 grams Super Saver skein or something, just roll another ball from about 1/3 of it into another ball and put it aside. You can use both. So you can still feed from the inside of the skein, and you can use the second ball that you rolled partially out of that skein. So that's how you do 2 from one skein. And I have a quick tip on how to roll a ball of yarn, and you can see that in the description box below if you need a little bit of help. So, without further ado, let's creep our way over to the craft table. Uh-oh. Ow! For our creeper headbands, I am using acrylic worsted weight yarn in bright green and black. And as I mentioned in the intro, you can take one skein and wind about 1/4 to 1/3 of it into a ball. If you need help winding balls, I have a quick tip on how to do that, and I will link it in the description box below. But the reason you want to have 2 running at the same time is so that you can use double the, basically double the strings. So we're going to be making a nice warm headband, and we're going to do that by using double the string at the same time. So in order to do that comfortably, you need a slightly larger hook. I recommend a 5.5 millimeter for this. This is also known as an I9. And for the small detail work that we're going to do for the face, a smaller than normal hook. And this is an F5 or a 3.75 millimeter. You can use this one or even a 3.5 millimeter if you have it. Something small that works comfortably with your acrylic yarn, but the idea is to make a bunch of small little pieces, and I'll show you that when we get to it. Other things you need are a yarn needle with a large eye, a pair of scissors, and a measuring tape, because you want to measure the head that you are making this for. And you also need to have your measuring tape handy so that you know that your foundation chain row is the right length. So if you've got all of that, then let's get started. First thing you want to do is get an accurate measurement for the head that you are going to make this for. If you need, if you haven't got the head handy because you're making it as a gift, then I have a handy little chart over on our website, and I'll put the link for that in the description box below too, that has a sort of a standard head size chart, head circumference, and you guys can zip over there and check that out on the tools page if you need help figuring that out. But if you've got the head handy, you want to measure it around its widest part. So actually go around the forehead, over the ears, and around the back middle of the head. You want that circumference measurement. It'll look something like that. So remember, measuring the circumference is actually going around the circle of something. And once you have that measurement, for example, on me, I'm about 22 to 22.5 inches. So that's the circumference measurement of my head. And I am now going to chain a foundation row that equals that length. So keep your measuring tape handy. Grab both of the tails of your two working balls. And remember, if you're working from the inside of a skein, this will probably unravel nice and neatly. But if you've got a ball, it's good to have a bowl around so to keep it from bouncing around. If I have my bowl handy, I will grab it. You want to grab both ends, pair them up so that they're even, and tie a slip knot using both of them together. So just pretend from here on out that these two strings is just one string, or one loosely wound bit of yarn. So you're going to treat both strings as a single string. Make sure that your overall slip knot isn't too tight or too loose and it moves around on your hook nice and comfortably. And start chaining. This takes a little getting used to, so be patient. That's my #1 rule here, is be patient. Just grab both of the strings and try to be nice and even with your tension. Take your time, and I like to work in sets of 10. So for example, I'll probably chain 30 before I bother to measure it against my measuring tape. But if you're working on a smaller head, then you want to double check it maybe at smaller increments than that. So start chaining your foundation chain row. Hold both of those strings together in whatever way is most comfortable. And try to be nice and easy and even with your tension. And once you've got a long enough foundation chain row, we'll move on. Once you've got your chained foundation as long as you need it to be, and remember, you want to measure it against your measuring tape. So start at the end of your slip knot and measure it all the way along until you get to the right length. Now, this just laying flat works out to be pretty much 22 inches. And remember I said I was between 22 and 22.5 inches? Don't forget that yarn has a bit of stretch. So you don't want to make it, you want to err on the side basically of having a few too few stitches, because this is going to stretch. Your work is going to stretch and you don't want it to be too loose. So if this fits over your head comfortably or over the head that you're making it for, or it's just a couple stitches below, if you stretch it out, just not really stretch it, but if you stretch it just a little bit and you get your target measurement, then that's what you want. Then you want to count the number of chains you have, because that will become the stitch count for every successive row in your headband. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 60 chains in my foundation chain row. 60. So that means that the stitch count for every row in my ear warmer is going to be 60. So now you want to take your foundation row. Take care not to twist it. So I like to kind of run it through my thumbs and my forefinger and just make sure that it doesn't twist on me. Nice and neat and tidy. Then grab your hook and slide it through that first chain you made, because we are creating a big old circle. Slip stitch to join your last chain and your first chain, and take a moment to try it on over your head. This is going to stretch a little bit, so if it's a little loose, that's okay, because your stitches might tighten up a bit. And if you get to the end, I have another nifty little trick for tightening up a headband if you need it. But remember, it's going to have a little bit of stretch, so you don't want it to be too loose, but you certainly don't want it to be tight. So if you try this on and it's too tight, then you need to take it back out, add a couple more chains. However, if it's perfect, then we can start. We are going to work in single crochet all the way around and around and around and around. So to begin, we're going to make sure you've got both of your long working strands, chain 1, and now this is the last time we're going to do that. from here on out, we are just going to work in the round. So no more chaining one or joining for rows. We're just going to continue around and around and around in circle from here on out. But I'm going to leave my little short tails down here because that is going to serve as the reminder of where the beginning of my round is. And that'll just make it sort of easier for me to count my rows later on. I'm going to work into the same stitch that I joined in, and I'm going to single crochet. And I'm going to single crochet into every single stitch all the way around my entire foundation chain row. And because I had 60 chains in my foundation chain row, I should have 60 single crochet stitches at the end of my first row. So remember, you're working with a double strand and it takes a little bit of getting used to. You don't want one strand to be too loose and the other to be too tight. You don't want to be fighting with your hook or your stitches. So take your time. This is row number 1. Row number 1 is always a little on the tricky side because you're working into those finicky little foundation chains. So take your time. Make sure your stitches are nice and even and you don't work too tightly. And I'll see you at the end of row 1. I'm just working through my first row here, and I wanted to give you a little reminder, because you're working with the double strands, when you pick up either, it doesn't matter if you want to work the top part of your chain or both the top parts of your chain. And when I say that, I mean, you remember there's 3 parts to that little stitch. There's this little bit, there's the bit that starts kind of in the middle and works into the next part of the chain, and then there's the loop underneath. I like to put both the top loop and that middle piece on the top part of my hook. You can also just use the top part if you want. It's up to you. But whatever part of the chain you're working, remember that it's 2 strands. So try not to split up the strands that run through your chain. Remember that it's like having a loosely spun double, like huge, 2 huge ply kind of yarn. So double strand is a little bit tricky, and like I said, the first row is always a little on the tricky side. So try not to split up your strands while you're working through your foundation chain row. Okie dokie, I'm at the end of row 1, and this is what it looks like. I've got my 2 little start tails down here, and they are going to stay there for the entire duration of this crochet project. I'm only going to weave them in right at the end because I like them as a visual reminder of where the beginning of my rows are. I've made 60 single crochets because I had 60 foundation chains, and because I chained 1 to start, I want to make sure I skip over this piece. So always count, double check all of your stitch count to make sure you have the same number of stitches as you did the number of chains in your foundation chain row. And once you're sure of that, you can work directly into this next stitch. So we're not joining with a slip stitch, we're just going to start working in the round. So I'm going to put my hook through that first single crochet, and I'm just going to single crochet into it. So, and there we go. And now I'm going to continue. I'm going to single crochet into every single stitch all the way around. And I'm just going to keep going around and around and around and around until the height, so the entire height of my ear warmer has reached roughly 3 inches. I want it to be at least 3 inches. You can go a little more if you want it to be wider, but at least 3. So no smaller than 3 inches, at least 3 inches. So now I'm going to let you single crochet yourself around and around and around in a big old circle until you've got enough rows that the height of your ear warmers is at least 3 inches. If you want to make it a little wider, go right ahead. Certainly, it's always good to err on the side of warmth, especially when you're making ear warmers. Okay, I have finished crocheting, and I double-checked the measurement of my ear warmer, and it is 3 inches tall. So that is the width that I want my ear warmer to be in. Now, if you try this on and it feels a little loose, or it's perfect now, but then down the road you wash it a few times and it gets a little loose, here's a neat little trick. We're going to finish off our row with a slip stitch and snip our yarn. So we're now finished with the double strand part of this project. So you finish it off just like anything else, and you're all done. You've got both your ends hanging out, and this is where the cool little trick comes in. I like to just do a finishing edge to both sides of my ear warmers. Anytime I make a headband or an ear warmer, I usually like to do a little single crochet edging around both sides. What it does is it kind of blends down your little, anytime you have like a little bit of unevenness in your row because you started and then you finished, putting on a row of single crochet afterwards evens all of that out. Makes it look neat and tidy. And if you feel like being stylish, you can always use a different color. But here's where the nifty little trick comes in. So I take my single strand now of green, because I'm going to stick with the green color, and I'm going to use the same sized hook, but I'm only going to use one strand of yarn. So one strand, which is going to be significantly thinner, and I'm going to join in the same place where I knotted off. I'm going to join with a single crochet. So remember, you leave your slip knot on your hook, you bring up a loop, wrap, and go through both. Then I'm just going to single crochet over top of all of my little tails here, all the way around the entire outside. And this is going to finish off the edge nicely. It's going to give it a little bit of tightness, so there'll still be some stretch, but it's going to just give it a little bit of tightness. If you don't want it to tighten up, then at the four corners, so the beginning, the middle, and the two sides, so basically in 4 quarters, put 2 single crochets in a single stitch. So double up here, double up here, double up here, double up here, and just single all the way around. That will give it a little more breathing space. If it's too loose, you want to do the opposite at the 4 corners. You want to single crochet 2 together, single crochet 2 together, single crochet 2 together, single crochet 2 together. And that will make it just a little bit smaller. So if it's perfect right now, then just go ahead and do your little finishing edging. If you want something a little more even but smaller, you can downsize your hook. So for example, this is a 5.5 millimeter. You could grab your 5 millimeter hook and just single crochet all the way around the edge, and that also will make it a little tighter. That's good to keep in mind if down the road it stretches out after multiple wears and multiple washes and it's sort of frustrating and you still want to wear it. You can always go back and add another row of single crochet on both edges with a smaller hook. Or if you don't have a smaller hook, you can just do that single crochet 2 together at the quarter points method. So that is a handy little tip for making a headband a little bit snugger, just in case your stitches are loose or they become looser with wear. So go ahead, single crochet around both edges just to give it a nice finishing look, and then we'll move on to the face. Remember, with your finishing edge stitches, you should still have the same stitch count as you did with every other row. So for example, 60 was my stitch count. I still want to have 60 in my finishing edge, unless I did the single crochet 2 together at the 4 points method, in which case I'll have 4 less. But I did not, so I should still have 60. I'm just going to join with a slip stitch to the top of that single crochet that I joined my yarn with, and then fasten off like I do every other row, and I'll weave in my tails afterwards. So that is my nice finishing edge. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now on the bottom, and then we'll get back to the face. Now that we're all finished the headband part of our creeper headband, you want to identify the back. So the back would be where you knotted off both your ends, and I've weaved my tails in. And I'm just going to sort of make that the middle back, and then fold it so that I'm looking at the front. So this is the part that goes all the way around my forehead, and I want my face to be just to the side. So I'm going to sew my face on either this side or this side, just off center. You can put it in the center too if you like, but I kind of like things off center. First thing we're going to make is one of the eyes. So this, if you've made the creeper, we're instead of sort of embroidering the actual face, we're going to crochet the little pieces, which is going to make it look a lot more pixelated. So this is the first piece. You don't need a tail this long, but I like to leave a long tail so that I can sew my pieces in together. So a little shorter than this, and you'll probably still have enough sewing tail. But this is the first piece, and you're going to make two. It's an eye. So you want to grab your smaller hook now and your black yarn, and we're going to begin with a slip knot. And these little pieces are finicky, so you want to make sure that you lay them out as you finish in the position that you want them in, just so that you don't get them confused. To begin the eye, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. So once you've got your 3 chains, you skip the first chain. So the first chain from your hook, you skip it because that's a turning chain. We're still using the single crochet stitch, so you identify the second chain from the hook, and that's this one right here, and you single crochet into that chain and into the last chain. So you chain 3 to begin, skip the first chain from the hook, single crochet into the second and the third chain. Chain 1, so chain 1, spin your work around, and then you're going to single crochet into each of those 2 stitches, and I know they're a bit tricky to see because this is black, but you should have, there's your first stitch, so right next to where your yarn comes out, and the last stitch. And the last stitch might be a bit tricky because it's part of that turning chain. Just jam your hook in there. You want 2 stitches across the top. And there's your square. Ta-dee. Make sure you leave some yarn for sewing and snip it off. You want to take that tail and pull it all the way back through that loop that was on your hook. That's to fasten it off. You don't need any other knots, that's enough. And that's your eye. So you want to go ahead and make 2 of those. Next, we're going to make his nose. So we're going to begin with a slip knot. Okie dokie. Make sure it moves around on your hook nice and neatly. We're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there's a length of chain 4. Skip the first chain from the hook because that's your turning chain. Identify the second chain, single crochet into that one, and single crochet into the next 2. There. And that's it for the nose. We're going to cut a long piece, not too long, because the only thing we're actually going to sew this to is going to be the top of his mouth. So you don't need a very long tail, but long enough to make sure that you can sew it to the mouth. So grab that tail, pull it back through the loop on your hook, and there is your nose. I'm going to set that aside. I'm not going to put it directly onto my head warmer yet because I'm going to be using it. So I'm just going to set it aside. And now I'm going to start the mouth. We're going to begin with a slip knot. And for the top of his mouth, we're going to chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's a length of 8. Same thing, skip the first chain from the hook because it's your turning chain. Find the second chain from your hook and single crochet into it. And you can keep right on single crocheting all the way to the end. At the end of your row, you should have 7 single crochet. All right, that's row 1. We're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch all the way back. So you should have 7 single crochet right across the top of row 2. Okay, that is the top part of the mouth. You've got 2 rows and each row has 7 single crochet in it. Now we're going to do the ends. We're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to single crochet into the next 2 stitches only. 1 and 2. We're going to chain 1, turn our work, and single crochet back into those 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And that is it for that side. You can snip your yarn. Doesn't have to be much because this is not the sewing tail. And just grab it, pull it back through that loop on your hook. Always remember to finish off because you want to make sure that you've knotted your end and it doesn't unravel on you. We're going to turn our work so that it's now that little sort of piece of mouth is sitting on the right side, or if you're left-handed, the opposite side. Grab your yarn, make another slip knot, pick up your mouth and identify the last 2 stitches on that mouth piece. So the very end stitch and the one just next to it. Join your yarn with a single crochet in that second last stitch. So you've got one at the end and one just next to it. You want to join your hook right at the second last stitch, and you're joining with a single crochet. So make sure your slip knot's on your hook. Pull up a loop in that stitch. There we go. And single crochet. Now you're going to single crochet into that last stitch. There we go. Chain 1, turn your work, and single crochet into those 2 stitches. 1 and 2. Essentially what you're doing is creating kind of like a big handlebar mustache. Now you're going to cut a long tail because this is going to be sewing on both the mouth and the nose piece. So make sure you have a nice long tail. Grab the long tail, pull it back through that loop on your hook so that it's knotted off. And now is a good time to grab your yarn needle and weave in all of your short tails, and I mean all of them, because you don't want them in the way when you're trying to sort of sew this whole contraption together, because it could get confusing. So just take a moment, weave all of your little tails back into either the front or the back, doesn't matter, just pick a side and make sure they're all woven into the same side of your fabric, because either side is good for the front or back. Okay, I wove all the short tails of my mouthpiece into the back of my work. And it doesn't have to be super neat and tidy because this is going to be actually on top of your headband. So just as long as they're out of your way and they're not going to get in your way. I also took a moment and I wove in the short tail of my nose just to make it a little easier. Now we're going to attach the nose to the mouth of our creeper face. So thread up that tail of the nose piece, pick up your mouthpiece and eyeball the middle. So there should be 3 stitches in between both of the turned down mouth sides. And it's right across the top of that you want to sew your nose piece on, because your nose piece is only 3 sort of stitches. So the other easy way to do that is to count. Pick up your mouthpiece and look at the top, count your stitches, make sure you know where all 7 of them are, count in 2, 1, 2, attach your yarn in that 3rd one, and then begin sewing. So you want to go through one side of the mouth and one side of the nose, and then through another side of the mouth and another side of the nose. so that you've sewn all 3 stitches. And be patient. Take your time. No rush. This can be a little tricky, but what you want to do is make sure that the nose piece of your creeper face is sewn into the middle part of the mouth. And if it's still a little wonky, don't worry, because we haven't sewn the entire thing on yet. And if you want to go back and forth a couple times just to make sure it's on there good and tight, then please feel free to do so. I know I'm going to, because I don't want my nose to fall off my mouth. And once you've got it on, you can bring your yarn to the back. So bring your sewing yarn to the back of your piece. And you can weave it in and out through some of these stitches. So weave it in and out, back and forth. You don't necessarily have to knot it because it won't unwind itself if you weave it back and forth through the backs of those stitches. And now if you're using a silky or a satiny kind of yarn, you might want to give it a knot just because that stuff does tend to want to unravel a little easier. But generally most of this acrylic or wool, if you're using wool, won't unravel itself because it kind of, the fibers sort of lock themselves together. And there is the nose mouth part of our creepy creeper. Oh yeah, starting to look like a total creeper here. Now you might want to take a moment and weave in the short tails on your eyes, and then we're going to start sewing the whole thing onto our ear warmer. Alright, the first thing I recommend you do is pick up your headband and kind of place the pieces where you think you want them. Now I have built this so that your pieces should be small enough that they can all fit together with a little bit of green border all the way around so that it still has that kind of creeper face look to it. But because you're working with 3 pieces, one of which is really, really big, I recommend sewing on the big part first, and then you can sew the eyes off the corner of the nose at the end, and that'll make sure that the whole thing kind of comes together looking properly. So you can put your eyes aside for now. If you've decided where you want your mouthpiece to fit, then you can tack it down with sewing needles if you feel you need the help, or you can do what I do and thread up your long sewing tail. Kind of keep your fingers in it, like so that it sort of stays in place. And I'll pick it up so you can see what I'm doing. And then pick up a piece of the headband, so a stitch on the top of the headband. And actually I'm going this way, so I want to make sure my yarn goes the right way. And then, same thing, pick up a piece of the bottom of the mouth. And then a piece of the headband. And what I'm doing is I'm grabbing loops across the top of the headband, so just across the top, so that you don't see any stitches coming through the back. Now if that's kind of frustrating for you, or you don't like the way it looks, you can always just sew the whole thing right through. It doesn't matter because obviously when you're wearing your headband you don't see any of the inside bits anyway. But I just find that this gives you a little more control and allows you to be a little tighter with your stitches without pulling the whole thing out of alignment. So you want to just go all the way around the edge of your entire mouth nose piece. And then always remember you want to stop and make sure that you're going to keep it in the same alignment. So for example, I want my mouth to sit across the bottom edge or the bottom row of my headband. So I'm going to make sure that I hold it in the right place, and that's why I say if you want to use pins, you're more than welcome to. But if you can do it without putting in pins, then it does make it a little quicker. But just make sure you stop every so often and double check that you haven't moved it or it hasn't slid around underneath your thumb, and that you've still got it in the right place, because you don't want to have to take out your stitches and re-sew it. So just go all the way around the entire edge of your mouth nose piece. Stop every so often to make sure that you haven't moved it and that it's still going to be in the right place when you get around to sewing those parts. And once you've got that piece on, then we can do the eyes. Once you've made it all the way around the edge with your sewing yarn, you can take that last little stitch, sort of stick your hook, or I should say your needle, somewhere in underneath that piece, and just bring it out somewhere near the top of your nose. And just let it sit there, because we're going to use that a little later to create a knot. So that's the mouth part and the nose. Now all you have to do is put on the eyes. Now a creeper face typically has its eyes anchored on the very corner of its nose. That's why I recommend doing the mouth and nose piece first, because it gives you a nice solid anchor with which to line up where you want to put your eyes. And it also kind of makes it a little easier to make that creeper face really look like a creeper face. So same thing, I like to just sort of stick my thumb on it, make sure the corners match up and they're not really overlapping. You want your eyes to sit out across the top of your face, just like that. And you can thread up your long tail on your eyepiece and do exactly what you did for the other piece. So just hold it down in the right place, pick up a stitch across the top of the ear warmer and a stitch of the eye. And just work your way around, pausing every so often to make sure you haven't pulled it too much one way or pulled it down or pulled it up. And just steadily work your way all the way around your eye. And then we'll do the other one. Here's a quick little tip for lining up the edge of the eye with the corner of the nose. If you get there and you feel like there might be a bit of flop, you can just take your needle, pick up a little piece of the corner of the nose stitch. You can see that I've done that. Little piece of the corner of the nose stitch. And then a little piece of the corner of the eye. So a stitch on the eye. And just carefully pull your needle through that. And that will link those two pieces together. Right at that tiny wee little corner so that it all looks like it's part of the same thing. Then you can just continue sewing the rest of the eye down. Once you've gotten all the way around, back up to that top corner, you can take your hook, or I should say your needle, and just put that last stitch through and bring it out about the same place that your other string is hanging. So if you can do that, oops. So you're just sort of weaving it underneath the rest of your eye and try to bring it out through the same space that the other string is hanging. There we go. Just so they're both hanging there. And we'll come back to that. So you can go ahead, put your other eye on in exactly the same way. So make sure you line up your two corners like that. Work your way around, bring your other tail out to the same place, and then we'll knot it all off. Okay, we've got all of our pieces sewn on. Now we just want to make a couple of simple knots with these strings. So the idea is to make sure you've brought them all out through the same space between those stitches. Make a couple of simple knots, so nice and tight. So there's those two, and then I'm going to keep this one out and knot these two together. Nice tight little knots. And then with your yarn needle, tuck it back in underneath the nose. If you have to sort of work a little bit at it, or grab your yarn, I should say grab your hook and pull it in. What you want to do is pull the whole thing in underneath the black part of the applique. So you're going to pull it in between the applique and the ear warmer. And this is just a nice little neat and tidy kind of detail. There we go. That will let you continue to have nothing showing through to the back of your ear warmer. That's if you're picky. If you want to just pull the whole thing through and weave them back and forth through the back of the ear warmer, you can do that too. Obviously, it's not going to be seen while you're wearing it. But just if you want to make that face stand out a little bit more, you can weave everything in underneath between the applique and the ear warmer, and that little bit of extra sort of yarn will just make the face stand out a little bit more, and it'll kind of act like stuffing. So just a kind of a nifty little trick, and you can go ahead and do that if you want. It's totally up to you. That's what I'm going to do. And once you've got all of your little tails either woven in or pulled through to the back and woven in, whichever you prefer. Trim off any little bits of fluff that might be sticking out, and you are all ready to put this on and creep your way through a Minecraft game. And there you have it. That is how you make a double strand ear warmer headband with a creeper face. Ta-da! This would make an amazing gift for anybody who's a Minecraft fan, whether you make the ear warmer or the hat. And may I also suggest you pair it with one of the creeper toys. We also have this tutorial available. I will put that in the description box below as well. Kinda can't get enough of the creeper around here. Remember, you can also follow us on Google+, on Pinterest, on Instagram, or you can pop over to our Etsy shop and leave me a message and a photograph there if you like. And while you're at the Etsy shop, make sure you peruse some of our patterns that we have for sale in the shop. Anytime you purchase a pattern from us, it goes to support the show. So it goes right back into the show and helps us make more nifty videos and bring you free patterns. One of which is this one on our website. So make sure you check out JaydaInStitches.com for free patterns and lots of nifty tools and tricks, and my blog. So anytime you visit us at any of those locations, we really appreciate it. We love your support. Please make sure you subscribe and you thumbs up our video and tell your friends, because crafting is so much more fun when you have friends to craft with. That's it for this week, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Stay creepy. And we will see you again really, really soon on the Jayda InStitches show. Bye!